Now, the reason why these games historically, I don't know that I can talk about the future 10 years as much as I can talk about the last 20 years. What administrators want to do is give Texas fans, the affluent ones, the ones that travel, they want to give them good road trips. So they'll go to towns or cities that they think that Texas fans would just in general want to go to. Schedule UCLA because we'll go out to LA, or schedule Tulane because you want to go to New Orleans. And they make these schedules with trips in mind, with the idea that, and it really is positioning the future of your program on the whims of rich people. because you're scheduling these games truly for those that travel. Who's going to make that trip that and so they want to give them a schedule that they're really into. And it's this idea that Texas fans want nice trips. And you know what? They do. Like, I never heard a Texas fan complain about the trips. They look forward to them. They look forward to the road games. They look forward to the good trips. But you know what else Texas fans like? And I would propose they like even more than good road trips. You know what that is, Anwar? You want to take a guess?
Winning.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
If you told a Texas fan, we're going to schedule a home and home with Miami, because who wouldn't want to go to South Beach and have a great trip? If you told Texas fans, here's the deal with the devil we can make, or the sports gods or whatever, 2 wins against schmoes, or a home and home with Miami where you lose one of the games, I just have to believe that Texas fans would be like, oh, I really want to go to South Beach. But you know what? There are 51 other weeks in the year. And if I need to go to South Beach that bad, I can do it anytime I want to. But you know what? We need to go 3-0.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Catch, I've been on the plane ride home with Texas fans from LA after USC, after a Notre Dame, 38-3 loss. I can tell you, the plane ride up and the plane ride back were 2 different emotions. And I guarantee you, they would be much happier if they went to, I'll use my alma mater, USF, and went down to Tampa for a weekend and kicked ass, and then came and partied down in Ybor or wherever you wanted to party, and then came and went to the beach, had a great time, and they came and be like, man, we kicked some ass, got to see Tampa, then we got to come back home with 3-0.
I don't even know if I'm scheduling South Florida away. Like, if you're playing South Florida, you play them 4 times and you get 3 home games and they get 1. And if you accidentally have to go to South Florida every once in a while, whatever. If you have to go to Rice and play at Reliant or something like that, Texas needs home games. Follow the SEC path. You will not get screwed. They will not get to the end of the SEC football season and say, we can't put Texas in to the playoff as the second team in the SEC, because they didn't play anybody. When has that ever stopped the SEC? Like, it's things that people talk about, but in reality, you get to the SEC championship and you're playing hand-to-hand combat with Alabama or somebody like that, and it's a close game and you lose, ain't nobody caring about your non-conference schedule anymore. They're like, you're good enough to play with Alabama. That makes you probably the 4th best team in the country. It's just competitively. And Texas Tech fans may watch this and say, you guys sound scared. Texas is no. Like, I'll acknowledge Texas Tech is fully capable of occasionally beating Texas. Like, they can beat them in basketball. This is just about doing the smart thing. This is just about, what has this program not done enough lately? When consistently? What approaches have they tried that keep failing? Well, in the non-conference, they keep scheduling harder than they need to. This Alabama game is a perfect example of that. What the fuck is Texas doing playing Alabama right now? It sounded good when they scheduled it. But even when they scheduled it, Texas wasn't good. But it was like, never been to Alabama. are affluent fans who travel with the team, they'll enjoy that. Well, you know who else won't enjoy it? The millions of other Texas fans who won't be going to that game, who will be counting an L. So, I'm just saying, I'm not saying don't ever schedule hard. I'm saying it doesn't make sense that Alabama's on the schedule one year and then here comes Ohio State. And then it just never stops with these games. And if Texas wants a medal for being bold and for having guts and for treating its fans to a great out-of-conference game, give them a medal. But you know what that doesn't help? The football program where wins and losses are counted. At the end of the day, whatever happens in Steve Sarkisian's tenure, they won't say his record was such and such, and he went to such and such games, but his fans had a great trip in 2020 and 2022. And, what do they go from LSU to Alabama? And you can play Ohio State, mix in some USC. It's gutsy. But when you're 5-7 or you're 7-5 or 8-4, that extra win sounds a lot better. And it might keep you from having to fire your coach every 3 or 4 years. Those extra 3 wins over 3 years.
Yeah. Catch. Look, go ahead. Because I was
going to say, you did that column last year about Texas on the road against Power 5 teams, non-conference.
Yeah.
It's a disaster.
It's so bad. It's so bad.
And, that doesn't even include like the likes of BYU or so. You know what I mean? Like, It's everybody. They play a team with a pulse on the road in non-conference, and it has gone bad for them. They're not winning those games. So, in addition to just never playing Texas Tech again, after I think we're in unison on this. Our overreaction is stop scheduling these games.
Catch, as we consider Alabama to be creme de la creme, right? Let me go through Alabama's non-conference schedule for the future, okay? In 2022, Bama will play Utah State. They're at Texas, Louisiana Monroe, Austin P or Pay. However the fuck to say that name, okay? 2023, they'll play Texas and they'll be at USF. 2024, they'll play Western Kentucky, USF, and then they're at Wisconsin. So you give them a team that has a pulse there. 2025 is at Florida State, Louisiana Monroe, Wisconsin. I'm just going through West Virginia, USF, Florida State. 2027, West Virginia. Then they're at Ohio State. So now you're like 2027. That is the time you go like, oh gosh, okay, they're actually going to play like one killer in like at least 5 seasons.
Well, I think Alabama can do whatever they want to. They win national championship after national championship. I think when you are floundering in the worst stretch of football in the history of your program, and it has engulfed more than a decade of results, you need to look at everything that you do. And again, you're right, man. The narrative for every Texas season is there's a loss in the first couple of weeks, and there's the bounce back. And there's one of the problems that they've had is that they need to save their bounce back for later in the season. You can only have so many bounce backs.
Yes.
And Texas historically has one in the second week of September on a semi-annual basis because they never go 3-0. Texas isn't getting out of the month of September without problems. And look, this season, that Alabama game is dangerous. Not because Texas will lose and it will cause them. We know the stakes right now going into the 2022 season. Texas needs to look a certain way, play a certain way, and Arch Manning will be the quarterback of this Texas football program from like 2024, maybe through 2026. That's not a bad thing. But if they get embarrassed against Alabama because Alabama's elite and Texas might just be pretty good, that could unravel the entire season. I mean, seriously, if Alabama drops a beatdown on Texas, we've covered enough losing seasons to know. Well, look, just last season.
Yeah.
That Arkansas game lingered. It lingered because what happened afterwards didn't matter. Rice and Texas Tech were viewed as games that don't count because you lost that Arkansas game and then they lose to Oklahoma. And it felt like whether they could sense it or not, they weren't ready for the bounce back. They weren't ready. It's just, yeah.
Well, because
other than a rethink to the approach is needed.
To piggyback what you're saying, though, you had a new coach, right? Who is, pumping them, telling them, you do this, this is going to happen. You do this, this is going to happen. And then you face the killer, and all of a sudden it's like, do you lose faith? And we know that those guys on that team started to lose faith. They started to lose confidence, and they weren't necessarily believing everything that they're being told, that this, if you do A, B, and C, these things are going to happen. You talk about, so now you're going to spend the entire offseason building them back up, telling them, all right, this, let's do this in the offseason, let's do this in the spring, let's do this in the summer. And then you're going to play freaking Bama in week 2. And now it becomes can you keep their confidence past week 2? Can you keep them on board? Can you keep the buy-in, right? Because that was the thing that he started talking about. You remember he talked about there was buy-in before the season, Catch, right? He felt like he had pretty good buy-in. And then the disappointing losses started to occur. Then all of a sudden he started like, well, I don't think I have all the buy-in. The guys started to lose it, and he started losing it a little bit. That's the risk when you start talking about Alabama in week 2. And that's why I think Oklahoma has done so successfully. Every new quarterback has had time to get ready. I've got 3 games where now I feel good before I go into the conference. And every Texas season, week 2, it's like, all right, well, let's see what happens in this loss.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Look, I have a feeling this video is going to elicit some comments. That's what the comment section is for. Are we a couple of pansies? Are Anwar and I just punks because we think Texas needs to schedule smarter and not as we began in the very beginning of the video. Don't mess with Texas Tech. Just let them go on their way. They'll be fine. You'll be fine. No toxic relationships allowed. And then B, just in general, schedule smarter. And, I know you don't think they should cancel the game against Alabama. Here's what I would do. I'd go to the SEC and I'd get SEC commissioner and Alabama AD in a room together. And I would go, come up with a reason why the SEC needs to cancel this game. Conference. We want you guys to break it up. And here's what we'll do. We'll owe you a big one. You let us know in the next 5 years when you need us to repay a favor, a big favor. But we don't need to play this game. We'll still come to Alabama next year. We'll reschedule the Texas home game later. And if that happens, Texas will get Arch Manning. Because there's nothing else in that first month of scheduling that I think is going to trip Texas up. The Alabama game really does have a chance to throw the season completely off kilter. There's a lot on the line there. And the least of which just isn't momentum for the entire 2022 season. And you know what? I'm looking at what Baylor did last year. Do you know who they won the Big 12.
Mm-hmm.
They ended up going to a bowl game and dominating an SEC opponent. Do you know who their first 3 games were against?
Tell me.
Texas State, Texas Southern.
Wow.
And then they got Kansas at home.
What were the scores of those games?
On the road. Their other non-conference game was later in the year when they played BYU at home, which was actually a fairly tough game. BYU was pretty good last year. But it didn't keep them playing a crappy, literally, you'd be hard pressed to find a major college football team that played a worse first 3 games than Texas State, Texas Southern, and Kansas. And they went 12-2 and won the conference and won a BCS game. And this idea that they had to have a tough opponent so that they could get ready to go on the road and play tougher teams, absolute fallacy. It's a made up thing. You could scrimmage bums during the month of September, and it will probably prepare your team just as well as going through Murderers Row.
It's a great point. Hey, by the way, Ketch, do you have those scores up? I'm just kind of curious what the scores were for those games.
They beat Texas State 29-20.
Huh.
They beat Texas Southern 66-7.
Okay.
And then they beat Kansas 45-7.
First
and then the next week, they played 14th ranked Iowa State at home in a game that really kickstarted their season. And that game ended up being 31-29, but they were up by double digits on Iowa State for much of that game. And then Iowa State scored late to make it closer than it really was. I mean, it ended up being a 2-point game, but Baylor, it wasn't like Baylor had to feel their way through against a tougher team. It's just not what happened. And they were perfectly fine. They ended up playing a bunch of ranked teams. And you know what? They did good. They beat number 4 Oklahoma. They beat number 7 Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship. They won their last 3 games against top 10 teams that they played last year, 3 in a row, with a incredibly terrible opening stretch of the schedule. Anyway,
sports mythbusters is what we are, baby.
We are today. I'm sure that somebody will put in the comment section that we're forgetting about something. Maybe. But here's what we're not forgetting about. Let's just say the last decade. Anwar's been here. He's made all those road trips. He's seen it with his own eyes. We can count to 3. We know they don't get to 3 without an L.
Correct.
It's not happening. So to be able to do that just once to build up some momentum would be interesting to see what this program could do. What does a Texas football program look like if they're winning their first 3 games? Just something to think about. Look, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments in the comment section, get the notifications, do all that stuff. Thank you again to Rogue Apothecary, the rogueshop.com. Use your Orange Bloods as your not password, but the passcode for the special promo. Get you some gummies. What's in that one right there? Are those both
like
gummies?
Some keef here.
Oh,
yeah.
Get the hookup. Use Orange Bloods as your discount. Rogue Shop will make it happen for you. For myself and Anwar Richardson, the 2 guys in blue, we will talk to you tomorrow. You guys be good to each other. Later.